Hello students, are we ready for this problem? Of course you are. Let's read it. Aaron drew the quadrilateral ABCD and dilated with the origin as the center of dilation to create the quadrilateral A', B', C', D' as shown in the graph below. Which option represents the dilation? So first of all, let's analyze a couple of words. First of all, we're talking about a dilation, right? I hope that you remember that dilation has two things that you need to keep in mind. It could represent a multiplication, but it can also show a ratio between two things. Okay, so be very careful. It depends on what the problem is giving you, right? So in this case, we're talking about a quadrilateral, and let's look at the quadrilaterals that are given to you. This is the first quadrilateral, which is ABC, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight that one. Everybody with me? Awesome. Okay, and it says that they created A', B', right? So what I want you to do is we're gonna highlight this one. It's very important that we know what's happening to the original. Well, some people call it the pre-image, right? We're gonna write those words in a minute. So if you notice, what's happening to my quadrilateral? Is the quadrilateral getting smaller or bigger? It's getting bigger, right? So there's a couple of things that you are gonna need to consider when it comes to this problem. So right above the word ABC, I'm gonna write down the word pre-image. My pre-image, some people call it the original, some people call it the old figure, right? It depends on how your teacher decided to name it. But we do for sure use pre-image. The other one, guys, this one is called the image, right? It is also called the new image, okay? So, couple of things that we're gonna decide on this one. What does the factor mean? What's a factor? A factor is a number, it's a given number that you are gonna use to multiply either the length of a shape or the coordinates of your points to find the new image. So there's two things we can consider, right? Let's write this down over here. So if the image got bigger, let me write it down, you might want to do it. If the image got bigger, then it means that the scale factor is greater than 1. Okay, so you gotta consider that. Think about the blue one and look at the green quadrilateral. It actually got bigger, right? So we're saying that the scale factor needs to be more than a 1. And let's see if you think about it, why. If you multiply any number by 1, you get the same answer, right? But if you multiply by a number that is bigger than a 1, that number will actually get bigger. Like for example, 2 times 3, it becomes a 6. But what happens if you multiply for a number that is less than a 1? That number actually gets smaller. So keep that in mind for the next assignments that we're gonna do. So a couple of things that we can do. I can decide to consider the length of my quadrilaterals, or I can look at the coordinates, okay? Remember I said something about multiplying? So I need for you guys to consider the following. If I know my pre-image, I will multiply that by the scale factor. I'm just gonna write down SF, we know that's a scale factor. That will help me find my image. So if I know the scale factor, all I need to do is multiply by the pre-image, which is the original, right? And that will help me find that image. Now, in this case, I do not know the scale factor, right? I do not know the scale factor. That's one of the things that I need to do. So I need for you guys to think about a little bit of algebra. If I want to find the scale factor, which is right here, this is my scale factor that I'm looking for. I will need to actually divide both sides by the pre-image. Is that right? I will need to divide by the pre-image. Divide by the pre-image. And guess what? That is actually, this will cancel. And that's how I will find the scale factor. So in the scale factor, I will find it by dividing the image over the pre-image. But I need for you guys to consider the first as a very important thing in your mind. So what did I start it with? I started by saying I need to multiply the pre-image times the scale factor, and that will help me to find the image. So on the other side of the paper, I'm going to write down what I found, which is how do I get the scale factor? Well, I'm going to need to find a comparison. That's the reason why I put the word ratio above. That's the reason why I put this word ratio, because now I need to find the scale factor. I do not know it. I'm going to compare the image, which is my new image, right, over the pre-image. And we can do it in two different ways. I can either compare the length of my shapes, or I can compare the coordinates. Is that right? So I'm going to do coordinates for this one. So what I want you to do is I want you to find, for example, C prime and C. What are the coordinates for those two? Well, C prime is 6 and 12, and C, which is my original or my pre-image, that's 4 and 8. This is my X value, this is my Y value. Okay? So the image, I am going to compare it to find the scale factor using those coordinates. Are we ready? Okay? What I want to do next is I want to highlight the same color pre-image, right? So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this one. That's my pre-image. And I want to highlight my image. Everybody with me? Okay, so my image is actually 6 and 12. And my pre-image is 4 and 8. So what I want to do next is I want to compare my X and my Y values. So I'm going to compare the X values. So I'm going to write down 6 over 4. Because remember, the 6 and the 4 are my X values for image and pre-image. I need to simplify this, and I will divide by 2. You always need to divide. Simplify, right? So what would I get? I get 3 over 2. So according to the first order pairs that I did, my scale factor will be at 3 over 2, which is the same as 1.5. Is that right? Isn't it 1.5 greater than a 1? And that's what we predicted over on the bottom, right? Okay, now I want you to compare the Y values. It's still from the same point, C prime. So I'm going to compare 12 over 8. What can I divide by? What can I use to simplify those two numbers? I can divide both of them by 4. Very good. And this will give me a 3 over 2. What do you notice about these two numbers? I'm getting exactly the same answer. Very good. Take a look at this. Take a look at this. I'm getting the same answer, right? 1.5 or 3 over 2. If for any reason you don't get the same numbers, that means that you're doing something wrong, because the scale factor needs to be exactly the same comparison, the same ratio. So I use C for those two. Am I right? Okay, I want to use the next one. I want to go ahead and use now B prime and B. So B prime is 6 and -3, and B it's 4 and -2. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to compare the X and then the Y. So when I compare the X values, I'm going to compare my image, which are the numbers above, right? And I'm going to compare that to my pre-image. And notice how I'm staying, if I'm comparing the X values, I choose only the X values. So this would be 6/4. And that gives me a 3/2, which is the same as 1.5. And the last one, on the Y values, it would be -3/2. And I know what you're thinking. I don't need to simplify. In reality, it's just a positive, right? Negative and a negative gives me a positive. What do I notice? I still get a 3/2. So in this case, now I know that my scale factor is 3/2 or 1.5. Therefore, my answer is letter D. Notice how in letter D, both X and Y's are both multiplied by the same number. I'm multiplying 3/2 times X, 3/2 times Y. Very good. I can also compare the length of my segments. For example, line segment DC is equals to 8. Is that right? So if I want to compare that to D prime, C prime, okay? Now, if you're thinking, how did I get 8? Well, just come back to the shape over here, and we're going to count 2, 4, 6, and 8. So this one is 8. Is that right? Okay. So if I want to find B prime, C prime, which is the new length, I will need to multiply 8 times the scale factor, which is 3/2 or 1.5. So I'm going to multiply by 1.5. That would actually give me a 12. And if you come back to the shape over here and you count, that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and yes, I do get a 12 as an answer. That's another way that you guys can find and check if you got the right factors.